Manipulation is how sales works. Pressure creates profit, and psychology is a weapon to be used against the buyer. See, all of these are lies that are just told by people who never really learned how to lead in a sales profession. The idea that influence is somehow dark or manipulative, it's not. Influence is elegant, it's intentional, it's precise, and when used the correct way, it's emotionally intelligent. Manipulative sales tactics are built on pressure and confusion, but ethical influence is about being congruent. It's when you align your energy, your intention, and your message so that your buyer feels safe and follows your lead and makes a decision that they should be making. You don't need to trick them into saying yes. What you want to do is you want to really understand their position, what their challenge or what their problem is. And once you know what that problem is and you're 100% certain that you can solve that problem, then you want to guide them using ethical influence. When you rely on tricks, you really destroy trust. And once trust is gone, in sales, you almost never get trust back. But when you learn to work with emotional precision, your certainty becomes contagious to the buyer. They feel it. Not only do they feel it, they want it. They want the certainty that you're presenting to them, that your offer creates for them. That's what I'm going to show you how to do. There are 8 ethical influence skills that outperform manipulation every single time. So the first one, is when we have emotional congruence that is louder and stronger than just mere confidence. You know, a lot of sales programs try to teach a salesperson on how to sound confident. But confidence is when we are congruent with the belief system that we have about who we are, about the problems that we can solve, about the strength of our offer, about our company being able to stand behind us. See, being confident without this level of congruence inside, sounding confident, comes across as fake. And people can spot that phony a mile away. When we are emotionally congruent, it means that your words, that your tonality, and your energy, your belief system, your intention, your level of certainty are all aligned. And if you think about it, that's how trust really begins. You don't need to overhype what you're selling. What you need is harmony between who you are and how you show up with the level of certainty that you know that not only can you solve someone's problems, but you want to solve their problems. See, people don't buy because you say the right words or because you speak well. They buy because they feel a certain trueness to you, that there's an authentic side to you that comes from you being an expert, comes from you being an authority, and comes from you having that certainty inside yourself. You can't fake confidence. People will feel it. So the subconscious mind is always scanning. Whenever you're talking with a client, you're engaging their conscious mind, meaning that they're listening to all the words that you're saying. But at a subconscious level, the subconscious mind is reading the very subtle cues. They're reading the pacing of your words. They're certainly listening to the tonality. They're watching your body posture. They're watching your hand movements. They're watching certainly the word choice and cadence. And they're asking themselves, is it safe for me to follow this person? Is it worth my time to follow this person? Should I give this person the next 60 seconds of my time? Where in your sales process are you performing confidence instead of anchoring clarity? See, if you're trying to come across as confidence, all of your internal game is trying to focus on how you sound, the words that you're saying, rather than you just being able to anchor 100% clarity, 100% certainty in a very authentic way. And that comes from experience, certainly in having the number of repetitions in the time that you have sales conversations with people, but it also comes from, understanding your market, understanding your offering, understanding who your competition is, what their offering is, what their approach is, what's their value proposition. See, when you've done your homework, when you've done the preparation, when you've gotten the reps in, confidence isn't something you have to manufacture. It's just something that is part of who you are. It's your state of being. The next skill, number 2, is to control the interaction or be controlled. The moment a buyer begins deciding if they're going to follow you is the moment where you establish rapport. In every interaction, there's a dynamic that happens at a subconscious level. We do this all the time. And we make a decision whether we're going to allow this person who we're talking to or who we're interacting with, are we going to allow them to lead the conversation? Are we going to give them that level of authority to lead the conversation? Now, some of this dynamic is programmed. Like you and I, when we were younger, we were programmed to follow the teacher. The teacher automatically had this position of authority. When we go to a doctor's office or when we meet with a lawyer or any really identified professional, we become the subjective in that relational dynamic. But when we meet with somebody who's called us in to submit a proposal or to talk about, our offering, we don't walk in there with the guarantee of us being accepted as the authority or as the expert. I know when somebody comes to do business with me, if they're late, I don't see them as an expert. I don't see them as a trusted authority, because I think, look, somebody who can't manage their time and live into a simple commitment like showing up on time, I don't know if I want to let that person lead the conversation for the next hour. So the moment a call begins, the buyer is deciding at a subconscious level, are they going to allow you to lead? Are they going to allow you to be the originator in this relationship dynamic? And when we think about how this translates into ethical influence, it means that you initiate the interaction with purpose, with structure, with authority, with a level of certainty that they can feel, not with pressure, not with, gimmicks and tactics, trying to, use neurolinguistic programming to trap somebody into an either or decision. See, when you control the conversation, you reduce what I call decision fatigue for the buyer. When you are going to logically guide somebody into a decision, and you're making a very logical case and building emotional certainty while you do it, you increase emotional clarity. It becomes easier for them to say yes. It becomes easier for them to accept the assumption that what you're saying is absolutely true without them having to go and do their homework. They see you as an authority, as an expert, and they trust you that way. Decision fatigue is the mental exhaustion that builds up when a buyer is forced to make so many small decisions, answer too many vague questions, or to process too much unstructured information, especially early in a conversation. This is why, in our program, I tell you, one of the worst questions you can, ask somebody is, tell me how, tell me how the business started, or, tell me, how you guys started, or what kind of work you do. You should know that. You should have already done your homework. And when you go into the engagement, you say, look, I understand that you guys have been around for, 70 years. You guys are clearly the leader, in the field. And, I know that you guys just did the merger and acquisition 6 months ago of XYZ Corporation. You guys have expanded now into 3 states. When you can show that buyer that you already understand their position, it allows them to kind of let their guard down. It makes it much easier for them to say yes. So a sales pro who is operating on hope, who hopes that a call goes well, they're already operating from this subjective position, not an authoritative position. And the reason why we hope it goes well is because we don't have the certainty that it's going to go well, And in most of those cases, it's because we haven't earned the right to have that certainty. We haven't done our own homework, not just on the competition, but on who we are, on the offer that we have, on the value proposition that we bring to the prospect. So if you don't establish this level of authority and certainty in those first 4 seconds, what you do is you spend the next hour trying to chase it, trying to create it. See, where you're letting the buyer control the emotional pace, but you're trying to call it or define it as rapport. On to skill number 3. And this is where we want to master tonality. We want to master our tonality, not just the words we say, but how we say them. And the difference is between making a sale and losing a sale. Tonality is the emotion of language. It's the emotional delivery system for every single thing you say. Get it wrong, and your words fall flat. They're misunderstood. They lose their meaning. They lose their punch. They lose their edge. Buyers don't just hear the pitch. They feel your posture. See, every tonality also has a physiology. Absolute certainty has a certain physiology. There's facial expressions that comes when somebody's speaking with authority and absolute certainty. Tonality makes all the difference. So you have to train not just your tonality, but you have to train your physiology. And you have to do that the same way that a professional athlete trains in their form. How does a downhill skier train their form? Or a swimmer or a diver train their form? They do it through repetition. They do it through review. They do it through refinement, certainty, utter sincerity, reasonable man tonality, mystery. All of these tonalities unlock a different emotional state in the buyer. And if you're not using at least 3 tonal shifts in one conversation, you're likely having your voice blend into just white noise with no real emotional impact. Skill number 4 is what we call microaggreements, creating momentum. In sales leadership, momentum is the salesperson's best friend. And the quickest and easiest way to get momentum in a sales conversation is through the use of microaggreements. A sale isn't made in one big moment. And I think that's where a lot of people fail. A lot of people fail that there's a big chunk of the sales process that says the close, and now let me work on this section. The close starts in the first 4 seconds. It's built on a series of just small microaggreements. Every yes creates a psychological progress and emotional safety. In influence, there's a principle of influence called commitment consistency. And when we can get a prospect and lead a prospect to saying yes and feeling a level of certainty with us, it's much more likely that their next decision will be congruent with the commitment that they made previously. So questions like, does that make sense? Or would you like me to show you this? These aren't just throwaway sentences. These are alignment tools. Does that make sense? Would you like me to show you this? What that does is it builds alignment. You're checking in with the prospect. You're letting them know, look, I'm not going to go any faster or any further than you're ready to go. That although I'm kind of in command and I'm the one who's the authority, I'm allowing you to set the pace. See, resistance builds when you go too far ahead. When you get too far ahead of your client, when your level of certainty outpaces their level of certainty. So resistance will build if you skip too far ahead. An agreement builds when you go and guide them step by step, and each step getting a micro agreement, buttoning that up. We call each one of these micro agreements a commitment objective. You may have, oh my goodness, you may have 30 commitment objectives in one call. So the commitment objective isn't necessarily to close the sale. The commitment objective could get them to agreeing to having the next meeting, agreeing to review some information, agreeing to introduce you to maybe their superior. So if your closing feels like it's a leap, you have to go back and you have to check and you have to look at what smaller bridges did you forget to build? When you go to close and you feel like you're at the closing line and your prospect's not there, like they're not with you. They're still in a level of confusion. They still have uncertainty. What you've done is you've ambushed the sale. You've missed building these small bridges of rapport and of microagreement. And for most salespeople, it's almost impossible to go back and build them. It's much easier to build them in the process, and having each one of these bridges be a commitment objective. So how can you engineer 3 microagreements into your next sales conversation? Like on purpose. What can you do? What questions can you ask that would allow your prospect to make an agreement? It doesn't have to be on a monumental thing. It doesn't have to be an agreement on price. It doesn't even have to be an agreement on timing. It could be an agreement on a spec in the scope of work. It could be an agreement on what you're going to do next in the next conversation. Skill level number 5 is when we want to lead with identity, not information. I often say that telling isn't selling. Prospects don't follow facts. They follow someone who embodies certainty. It's not just fact. I mean, you could point out all kinds of facts and still not have agreement. They may be facts, but hey, facts change, don't they? Facts change. When the conditions and circumstances change, some of those facts change. What they're really going to follow is somebody who embodies certainty, somebody who can say, look, these are the facts. And if the conditions and circumstances change, then we're willing to change along with them. See, sales is a transfer of identity before it's a transfer of logic. They have to buy into you before they buy into all the facts and figures and features and benefits. And when we use principles of influence, and we teach 7 principles of influence in our program, it increases when you show up as someone who doesn't necessarily need the sale, but knows how to lead that process. The posture is look, I would love to do business with you. I'd love to have your business, but I don't need your business. I'm certainly not going to sell my soul for it. I'm certainly not going to say things that aren't true. I'm certainly not going to pressure you to get a sale. I'm going to stay in my role as the trusted advisor. I'm going to stay in my role as the authority, and I'm not going to submit myself to the tricks and gimmicks to try to just force you into saying yes, and then 3 days later you want a refund because you were uncertain. See, when you make it about yourself, you become reactive. But when you make it about who you are, about your own personal integrity, about how you do business as an authority, you stay centered. The next skill is number 6, and this is that certainty isn't taught. I can't teach a prospect how to have certainty. There's no amount of information that I can give them that's going to give them certainty. Certainty has to come from me. It has to be something that I have and then I transfer. See, buyers don't need you to convince them. They don't need you to just tell them all the facts and figures. They can Google it themselves. They can use ChatGPT as well as you can. What they need is they need to have absolute certainty in you as being the trusted authority, as the expert who's going to not only, give them the information they need, but also show them how to apply it and show them the value of the information. Show them how to extract the value out of the value proposition that you're offering. Manipulators in sales will try to force urgency. They'll create false urgency. Again, professionals don't do that. Professionals transfer certainty. Professionals know that there's a level of urgency that the buyer has. That's why you're there. I don't need to manufacture it. That's the beautiful thing about the principles of influence. You don't have to create any of the conditions for you to influence. They're there naturally. If somebody has called you to come and look at their roof, or called you for pest control service, or called you for a price on carpet cleaning or software, they've called you because they already have a certain level of urgency. They already have an awareness of their need. You don't need to force or manipulate that urgency. That will come naturally from you holding a level of certainty. And the more certainty that you carry in your role as the authority, as the expert, your process, your offer, the words that you're going to use, the value proposition that you bring, the less resistance you'll meet in the sales process. And you can't fake this. You can't fake this. You have to do your homework. You have to really understand, what is it that you're selling? What is it that you're selling? See, when I owned my cleaning business, I thought what I was selling was, the clean office. I thought that's what I was selling. I thought that I was selling that when somebody came in, their trash would be emptied and their floors would be mopped and their bathrooms would be clean. That's the bare minimum. That they expect. They expect every company to be able to do that. What I realized was I was selling the certainty that, first off, the service was going to take place according to the contract. A lot of cleaning companies don't show up. A lot of cleaning companies have had issues with people stealing. A lot of cleaning companies have had issues where they forgot to turn on the alarm or lock their door or left the air conditioning and the lights on all night long or over the weekend. And so when I realized that I was selling much more than just cleaning services, I was selling the certainty that when they gave me the keys to their building and the alarm code to their building, that they could trust that it was in good hands, that we were going to show up when we said we were going to show up, do what we said we were going to do it. And we were going to do it in a really professional way, that all of our people were screened. All of our people had background checks. All of our people were uniformed. All of our people had a visit from a manager before the door was locked. So after the crew cleaned, a manager showed up to every single site and walked the building to make sure that we had lived into our commitment. That level of certainty was much more valuable to a buyer than us just emptying the trash cans. What's one belief that you have a level of 10 out of 10 certainty about? What's one aspect of your offer that you have absolute certainty in? And how often do you lead from that place of certainty? How often do you bring that value forward so that it has value in the conversation and it has weight in the buyer's decision? Skill number 7 is rapport is not it's not about know, like, and trust. Rapport is not about commonality or similarity. Rapport, at the end of the day, is about safety. It's about them feeling safe making the decision, that this decision's not going to come back and bite them in the butt. When that HR person or that, operations director is making the recommendation to their superiors to do business with you or your firm, to bring you in, to make you the selected vendor, their reputation is on the line. If you don't perform, it reflects poorly on them, not just you. And so they want to feel safe as a part of rapport. And again, most salespeople confuse rapport with being liked. But rapport is about feeling emotionally safe in that conversation. I know that there were times when I sold people cleaning services and that office manager didn't necessarily like me. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and I know that. But they trusted me. They had certainty in me. They knew that if I told them we were going to do this, that they could take that to the bank, that it was going to be done. You don't need to mirror their personality. All you need to do is you need to model the confidence and certainty that you have in how you present yourself to establish yourself as an authority, as an expert. You don't need to go take neurolinguistic programming and learn how to use words that they use and reflect it back to them. Look, there's a time and place for that. And I'm not saying that doesn't have some weight. It does. But you know what trumps that every single time is their feeling inside that they can trust you, that they can believe in the words that you say, that they feel safe doing business with you, that this isn't a decision that they're going to regret later. People don't need to see themselves in you. They need to trust you and know that you know the way forward, that you know how to solve their problem, that if conditions and circumstances change, and they often do, you're going to be the person who can guide them through this. True rapport is built through certainty, it's built through listening, and it's built through aligned intention. Not through small talk, not through commonality about what kind of dog they have and what kind of dog you have. When your energy communicates to that prospect that they're safe with you, that they can know that they've made the right decision, all of their objections begin to dissolve, because objections are just a smokescreen for uncertainty. The only reason why somebody presents an objection is because they lack certainty. That's why. When you can remove that level of uncertainty and you can build absolute certainty in them, emotional and logical certainty, all those objections begin to go away. So you want to ask yourself, in a sales engagement, are you trying to be liked, or are you anchoring yourself as an authority? Are you spending more time in your head trying to get this person to like you and make some kind of connection that you think is rapport? Or are you spending more time establishing yourself as the trusted authority, as the expert, as the person who they can feel safe making a decision with? Finally, skill number 8. And this one is for us to hold space and not chase the sale. Every sale has an emotional gravity. You either pull people in or you push people away. Every word you use, every feature and benefit that you present, every area of certainty that you build, either creates emotional certainty or it moves people away from certainty. Not only every word that you say, but how you say it and how you hold your position of authority. See, when you hold space for a decision, you become magnetic. And when you chase, you trigger resistance. Your job is not to get the sale. Your job is to present them enough information that they feel safe making the decision that they should be making. Your job is to guide them to either a clear yes or a clear no. They don't need to think about it, that they have clarity. When somebody's saying that they need to think about it, it's not that you've not made the sale. It's worse than you not making the sale, because not making a sale is a clear no. You're stuck in this place where the client is clearly unsure. They don't have enough certainty to make a decision, yes or no. That's the kiss of death. And if you're going to try to use manipulation, all it does is create pressure, where influence creates collaboration. And the more grounded you are, the more clarity the buyer gains just by being around you. They feel better by being around you. They feel better when they bring you into the board, when they bring you into, their leadership team. They feel certain that you're going to be able to deliver, that the board, that their leadership will see in you what they saw. So where are you trying to maybe force momentum instead of creating a trust structure where they feel absolutely safe, that they trust you and they trust making the decision because they know that when they're working with you, that you're going to guide them regardless of how the conditions and circumstances play out. You're going to be able to solve their problem. You don't need tricks. You don't need more fancy tactics. What you need is mastery of the basics. You need experience and repetition. You need to lead with this level of internal certainty, not insecurity. Because the truth is this, you'll never outperform your own self-concept, your own self-image. If you doubt whether you're an authority figure, if you don't feel like you're an authority, if right now I were to ask you, are you seen as an authority, as an expert in your field? If the answer isn't an absolute yes, then you've got work to do. And there's no amount of manipulation that's going to trick a buyer into seeing it. Certainty becomes priceless. And so I want to encourage you to go and lead every single sale like the professional and authority and expert that you are. I want you to own that. And again, before you go any further, make sure, press pause and download this sales energy assessment that I created for you. If you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but you're not getting the response that you want, I'm telling you that this tool is going to help you. Your energy signature is either aligned with success or it's competing with it. And this assessment will tell you exactly where you stand and what to shift. It only takes about 5 minutes, but the clarity that you'll gain could shift the way you sell forever. And as soon as you've done that, I want you to come back and I want you to go and watch the next video called Secrets to Mastering Cold Calling, because cold calling isn't just about sounding polished. It isn't just a numbers game. It's about taking control of those first 4 seconds of every single interaction and anchoring emotional certainty right from the beginning and owning this dynamic. And if you struggle with nerves or hesitation or losing kind of your level of certainty early in the conversation, this next video is going to fix that. I'll see you there.